Welcome to Freshwater Naturalist channel, folks. I am known as the Bisayang Kano, and I'm here to describe to you, to explain to you how easy it was to enter the Philippines despite all of the requirements and the processes and the web apps and all these things that we have to do. Folks, it was easy. In this vlog, I'm going to talk about the current requirements. I'm going to talk about a couple of pro tips at the end, and I'm going to give you my actual personal experience on how those requirements actually played out as I was trying to enter the country. All right, we're going to talk about vaccines. You have to be fully vaccinated to enter the Philippines. It's that simple. If you jump all over the YouTube here, so many channels, and you hear people saying, no, the Philippines isn't really requiring Americans to be vaccinated, foreigners to be vaccinated. Well, here's the deal, guys. You have to be vaccinated. Even, let's just pretend that once you arrive to Manila, they're not going to require you to be vaccinated. They'll ask you to quarantine. Let's just assume that's true. The airline is going to require you to be vaccinated. Now you can't get to Manila in order to do your quarantine time. So be very careful at presuming you know what those requirements are. As far as I'm concerned, you have to be fully vaccinated. A minimum of 2 vaccines. You really should have 3. We've got different variants going around, and Philippines is one of the safest countries, in my opinion, for protecting you and protecting each other against COVID. So you want to do your bare minimum obligation to keep this country safe. You're wanting to arrive here. You're wanting to spend money here. Great. Do it safely for yourself, for your family, and for the people here that live in the country. Let's talk about the vaccine requirements. You have to be fully vaccinated. You have to have your CDC card. If you're in the United States, I'm pretty much primarily talking here to Americans, but for most foreigners, it's the same requirements for you. Get yourself your own country of origin CDC card, and make sure that your CDC card is actually honored or accepted by the Filipino government. The American CDC vaccination card is fully accepted by the United States. You don't have to have a WHO certificate or anything. You just have to have your card in hand, and of course you have to upload that into that One Health Pass that we're about to talk about shortly. So, long story short, get vaccinated, be vaccinated, and just be ready to comply with those minimum requirements. Let's talk about the health insurance requirements. The Philippines is requiring you to be covered for health insurance purposes, including COVID, of up to $35,000 coverage. Seems kind of wild, but folks, you don't want to expect the Filipino government to pay for your lack of taking care of yourself. It's quite possible you come to the Philippines, you will catch COVID. If you're one of those that are going to have a hard time with the disease, you want to be able to make sure that you can pay for it. And health insurance not only takes care of that, but it also allows you to enter the country. It's one of the requirements. A little bit later, I'm going to let you know how it actually played out when I was entering the country. But needless to say, you have to be covered with health insurance. I personally purchased my health insurance through Safety Wing, and I love this place. It's not the cheapest, but it was the most convenient and the easiest one to sign up and apply for. I'm going to be turning 50 this year, so my health insurance through Safety Wing cost about $63 a month. That's pretty good. That's cheaper than American health insurance. If I was in my 30s, it would have cost me $43. That's cheap. This insurance not only covers those requirements that the Philippines is expecting you to be covered with, but it also covers lost baggage, flight cancellations, and things of that nature. So it's actually travel and health insurance all in one. Peace of mind. That's all that this product offers. Offers peace of mind to you and peace of mind to the Filipino government, because they have no business paying for your health care. Period. The One Health Pass, not as bad as it seems. It's an app. Android, App Store, download it, install it, and you can easily update your passport picture, your CDC picture, your COVID test, and also some of your travel plans for your initial destination. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I didn't have any of this filled out. I originally went to Indonesia, and I was there quarantining, and I did the Indonesian requirements. I've done these requirements for 2 different countries, one right after the other. And let me tell you that the Filipino requirements are black and white, easier than the Indonesian requirements at the time that I traveled at the time of filming. All it takes is for you to upload passport, vaccination card, the PCR test, which you cannot upload until you get your test results, right? So this is important. You got to have an internet connection for this. So if you're at the airport when all these things arrive, be ready to have all that in place. But it wasn't bad. I didn't even have this done until I was in Indonesia. Didn't even download the application until I was in Indonesia. And I took care of everything. It wasn't that bad to do. If you need help, there are tutorials on YouTube to literally walk you down step by step on what to do. It's not that bad, folks. It's just an app that's going to take all your information ahead of time, which makes your entry even easier. If you folks can understand the brilliance behind this, right? There's a method to this madness, or madness behind the method, and it's just to make the process of entry that much easier for you in the end. All right, now on to the COVID test. This is the big boy. This is the one that you need to get prior to boarding the airplane. At the time that I entered the Philippines, you needed a 48-hour PCR COVID test. I believe that the requirements have been relaxed to 24 hours PCR and or antigen test. Do not take my word for it. You must double check. All right. One of the things about these YouTube videos is you hear a little bit of information and then people run with it. Do not run with everything that you hear, including what I'm telling you at the moment, because things can change again in yet another 24, 48 hours from the time of filming of this vlog. So please double check, make sure what the minimum requirements for your COVID test are to be. But let me just explain. In the next section, I will tell you exactly the way that I went ahead and did it. But you have to have a COVID test before entering the country. Part of the deal with entering the Philippines to get that visa upon arrival is you have to make sure you do not have COVID and that you're fully vaxxed. It only seems fair for the Philippines to basically just give away these visas back again. It only seems fair that you folks do these basic minimum requirements. Just get vaccinated. Just get your PCR or antigen test, whichever one you need, and get it in the right amount of time within that time frame. That's all I'm going to add to that. All right, folks, let me explain to you how it really played out. Number 1, I'm not the most organized individual in the world. Number 2, I don't plan things very well. Number 3, I have an ability to adapt and overcome despite obstacles, and I think that's what saved me. But it took me 5 COVID tests before I finally arrived in the Philippines. Now, don't get scared, because your experience will not be the same as mine, and mine experience will definitely not be yours. Here's the way it played out. Before I arrived to the Philippines, I was actually in Indonesia. I went to Indonesia. But it's still part of the same mantra. So I'm gonna share my story, including my Indonesia trip, because it would have happened to me if I had just gone directly from LA over to the Philippines as well. What I did is I thought I would be super Mr. Planner, super Mr. Prepared, and I went and got myself a COVID test. When I took that test, it was actually free. I did it at a CVS or Walgreens, and it was great. You walk in there, they give you the thing, you shove it up your nose and give it to them, and then off you go. The problem was that the COVID results didn't arrive until after my flight left. So you can imagine that was That test was bunk. It was no good. It wasted my time. I stood in line for 45 minutes trying to get a COVID test, and I wasted that time. Because even though I try to be Mr. Planner and try to get ahead of myself, I did it the wrong way. When I realized that this COVID test result was not going to arrive on time, I instead decided to simply resort to do the more spendy way and just do it at the airport. My flight wasn't going to leave until 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and I made sure I arrived at 6:30 in the morning because they opened the COVID testing centers at the LAX airport at 7 a.m. I arrived at 7 a.m. I had an appointment which was for about 10 a.m. and I thought that they could just squeeze me in early and get the result early. No, they're official. These folks work on a time clock, and at 7 a.m. there's other passengers that are ready to take the test. They couldn't squeeze me in early. So I was forced to come back at 10 o'clock. I went, took a little nap, had some breakfast, came back, took my test. It was extremely easy. My test was scheduled for 10. I got a little worried because at 10 they hadn't called me, and finally at 10:15 they called me up to the little booth. Again, I shoved that stuff up my nose, and I handed it over to them, and the way that was, and within the hour I had the email confirmation. I was able to take that and actually upload into the Indonesia's One Health version of One Health Pass, which was also a requirement of theirs, and it was fine. So if that would have been the One Health Pass, it would have been uploaded, and my One Health Pass would have been complete and ready to go. Would have just needed to wait for the One Health Pass to send you the confirmation that everything was done, and you get that in the form of a QR code. Once you get that QR code, you're good to go. If you're on that One Health Pass and you see that QR code, you are rock solid. But let's talk about the vaccines again. So once I arrived to Indonesia, I had to take a third COVID test. Now we're on 3, right? The first one I bumbled because I didn't have that confirmation planned out perfectly. The second one was extremely expensive. I paid $199 for it, but it was the right test. It was the exact test that I needed, and it came in time as promised, as delivered. As much of a bad reputation that these airport COVID testing centers seem to get because of their pricing, you're paying for the peace of mind that you're going to get everything, as long as you're negative, that you're going to get on your flight in time with all the compliance that you need. So you guys can decide if it's worth the value of paying extra for a COVID test. Otherwise, make sure that the CBS is going to, and the Walgreens of the world are going to give you your results when they need to be arriving. Secondly, once I arrived to Indonesia, I took yet a 4th COVID test because they want to make sure you don't have COVID between the first time you took it. Oh my gosh, this is, folks, we're trying to enter the Philippines. It's nothing like this Indonesia mantra that was set up. Since the time that I arrived into Indonesia in February, things have relaxed much better. If you're going to Bali, they'll give you a visa on arrival. It's a lot much better. So Bali is on your list too. Hey, consider that place. It's great. All right. So when I finished my quarantine, I took that 4th COVID test. My whole plan for going to Indonesia was, this was before the Philippines opened their borders. I was going to spend 6 months with a business visa in Indonesia and do my digital nomad stuff that I do and work and, live on the beach. But they opened the Philippines, and the Philippines has always been my target country. I have a son in this country. I need to visit my son, and we need to spend time together. And so my priority immediately once the borders opened up in the Philippines was to just figure out how I'm going to get to the Philippines. So I bought a plane ticket 2.5 days after my last COVID test. The COVID test that set me free out of quarantine in Bali. And the only thing was that tests to enter the Philippines at the time was 48 hours. I think it was 51 hours when I took the test to when my flight was. So it was no good. So immediately had to run around, had to ask hotel staff, where can I get a COVID test so I can get on this flight to the Philippines? It's going to be damned if I do, damned if I don't to get to the Philippines at this point. I was like panicking. It turns out that the hospital right next to the hotel that I was staying at did the COVID testing. It cost me $60 versus the $200 that I had just paid in LAX. And so I thought that was a great deal. They promised that I would have the results within 24 hours. And sure enough, I had everything. I got my COVID test, I got the results, I had everything that I needed. And that's actually when I decided to apply for the One Health Pass that you needed to. Because without that COVID test, the One Health Pass is kind of worthless at the moment. You won't get that QR code that I was talking about earlier. So, took that last COVID test, my 5th, within like 6-day time period. And actually within a 7-day time period, I ended up taking 5 COVID tests. Now, I'm telling you guys this story so you don't have to mumble and you don't have to stumble through all the stuff that I went through, right? Get it all planned out, get it all figured out, and hopefully trying to dot those I's and cross those T's that I wish somebody had done for me when I was doing this. But it's supposed to be easy. Let me tell you, it was extremely easy entering the Philippines. Despite all of my bumbling, it was my fault. It was extremely easy. We're about to get into all that. So let's talk about the One Health Pass. It's an app. It's easy to fill out, upload all the information you're required. Once it's set, you get a QR code. You don't get it right away. You got to keep checking, but you get your QR code. It's ready to go, and that's it. Perfect. Once you get your QR code, you're ready to enter the country because you fulfilled all of the requirements ahead of time before you talk to any immigration, health, inspection officer in the Philippines. You guys understand this, right? Where I'm going with this. This is actually, you're knocking all these things out ahead of time before you even touch and get into the country, and then it'll make the process easy. All right. Now let's talk about the health insurance. You gotta have health insurance. I already mentioned that Safety Wing is my go-to place. It should be your go-to. I don't get paid by these folks. I don't get any commissions. I just think that they have a great product. In fact, when I bought the health insurance, I was able to just add the Philippines as an extra country. So I didn't have to do anything except for modify what countries I was going to participate in. During the time that I purchased the insurance, I actually purchased it on a monthly recurring basis. So every month they just take it out of my bank account, and my health insurance is paid for and covered. So it was very easy for me to, once I had the Safety Wing for Indonesia, to just go into my account and select the Philippines as the next destination country and add that to my list. It was perfect. When you do the Safety Wing insurance, they email you a card. And there's also a link where you can download and print out a PDF of your health declaration. It's more of a certificate. It's sort of like a letter from the insurance company to the government saying, "Dear sirs, this person is covered on the insurance policy, blah, blah, blah. And we certify that this is, government approved health insurance, blah, blah, blah," all these things. That's really the document that you need to turn in to anybody that's checking for your health insurance. That Safety Wing membership card or ID card, nobody really asked me for that. Now, once I got to the Philippines, let me just tell you, not one person asked me for health insurance or for proof of health insurance. This doesn't mean that you should now not get the health insurance, because I said not one person in the Philippines asked me for a proof of health insurance. When I got to Singapore, after I left Indonesia, I went back to Singapore because I flew with Singapore Airlines. When I got to Singapore Airlines once I got to Singapore with Singapore Airlines, and my connecting flight from Jakarta to Manila, it was the airline check-in desk where I was actually asked for my health insurance and proof of health insurance. So just because folks in the Philippines decided not to ask, or they forgot to ask, or they just don't ask, whatever the reason is, you still needed, or I still needed that health insurance because the lady in the counter asked me for my proof. And what I did is I gave her my Safety Wing membership card, my ID card that they give you. It wasn't good enough. She wanted to see that declaration. This is why I explained it just a few seconds ago, because I didn't have it with me. What I had to do is I had to fumble again and open up my laptop, and this is at the check-in counter, and the lady's looking at me, and I got 50 passengers behind me, and they're going, look at this guy. And sure enough, I was able to find that email from Safety Wing with that PDF. All I had to do was just show her that I had it, didn't have it printed out, none of that, and she just saw it on my laptop screen, and once she saw that, I was on that plane, and it was smooth sailing from that point. So there we go on the One Health Pass, on the Safety Wing insurance, and on the other requirements. Be sure that if you're going to the Philippines as a tourist, that you have an outbound ticket within 28 days of entering the country. It could be a return ticket if you're coming from the USA, or it could be a next destination ticket, but make sure you have something that says that you're leaving the country within 28 days. Otherwise, you will not be able to enter the Philippines with the visa on arrival visa. So make sure you have those things taken care of. Alright guys, so I've already talked a little bit of how all this kind of started to play out for me, but let me explain the vaccine situation. My vaccines went great. My CDC card worked just fine. The airline in Indonesia, in the Philippines, anybody that's asked looks at your CD card and it's great, works great. The One Health Pass, the QR code, makes it super simple to get through. And well, long story short, it took me, just 15 minutes to get from when I left the plane in Manila to standing outside of the airport terminal in Manila, waiting for the taxi to take me to my hotel. 15 minutes, if you can imagine. This is the brilliance. This is what makes sense about the One Health Pass, because they really already know who you are. They know when you're going to be arriving. They know if you've already had your PCR test. They know if you've already had your vaccinations and everything. They know this ahead of time, and because of that, it makes the entry process easy. As soon as you leave the plane, you're met by a couple of Filipino military folks. They're really polite, and they're just guiding foreigners to one side and non-foreigners, Filipino nationals, into another line, because of different immigration sections. And it was extremely easy. So let's get into the pro tip about how to do this even better. Try to designate your plane to arrive between midnight and 6 a.m. because there are no crowds. I can only imagine at 3 in the afternoon when 6 planes have finally arrived in the same destination, and all these passengers now, you have 300-400 passengers trying to get through all of these lines, through the One Health Pass check, to the immigration sections and all that. If you arrive at midnight, between midnight and 6 a.m., you get all that staff all to yourself. I was one of the last ones to leave the airplane, and by the time I got to all these lines, half the passengers that were in front of me had already gone through. So basically, there was maybe 40 people in front of me that I had to wait. It took me 15 minutes to get through it all. They check your One Health Pass, they check your passport again, they check your boarding pass, they want to look at your CDC card, even though it's in the One Health Pass. They just want to make sure everything's on the up and up. And then you go to do your baggage claim, you go through customs and immigration, they check your luggage, if you've got anything in there on the x-ray, they give you your visa on arrival, and everything is good to go. It took me 15 minutes. All of the little headaches that I had before, the tests that I got too early, yet whose results weren't going to arrive until after my flight, all that stuff just literally dissipated, simply because it was all pre-set up for this expectation to get through these lines a lot more efficient. So be rest assured that all of these processes are made to actually make you have less of a headache in the long run and in the end. So My first pro tip is to arrive at between midnight and 6 a.m. You just can't beat it. It just makes the most common sense, and just to make things a lot easier and smoother for you. Another tip that I would recommend is make sure you've got everything planned out. Make sure that the test that you're going to take, the COVID test, is the right test. I believe because at the time of filming the latest requirements, you can pretty much take any test at this point. Again, double and triple check what I'm saying, double and triple check what everybody is saying, and make sure that it is so. It might even get better within a couple days or another week from now. But so far, so good. Be prepared to have masks. If you're a non-masker and an anti-vaxxer, just move on from the channel, because the Philippines is not for you. It's one of the most protected countries in the world, and last time I checked COVID numbers 4 days ago, the USA reported 23,000 new COVID cases. France had reported 230,000 new COVID cases, and the Philippines reported 230 new COVID cases. Everybody's vaccinated, everybody's wearing masks. We're just protecting each other, and it just makes sense. Coming from California, where people believe in vaccines, people are still getting sick because we still have knuckleheads that don't want to wax and don't want to wear masks, and they're basically spreading the cooties all over. Here, people might have the cooties, but it's not spreading as aggressively as it is in the other countries. And it's kind of sad to see a country like the Philippines outpacing a country like America. I'm proud of this country. I've never felt safer than being here in the Philippines. I walk around everywhere you go, even motorcycle drivers are wearing masks. They always wore masks before the COVID. They always did. You don't want to get dust and smog in your face. So it's really not a big deal to ask people to wear masks, actually. You see children wearing masks. People just get it. And so a lot of these requirements, and a lot of these things that you might be frustrating you, that might be turning you off from coming to the country, they're here for a reason. The hospital capacity in this country cannot handle more than what they've already had. And they just can't. And because of that, you're going to be vaccinated, and you're going to have PCR tests, and you're going to be wearing masks, and you're going to like it, whether you do or not. I hate wearing masks. I am an asthmatic. I hate wearing masks. I have got every reason not to wear a mask, but I wear a mask because everybody is, and I'm not going to be the one. I'm not going Karen in this country. Anyways, guys, long story short, you know the requirements, you know what it takes. I simply thought I would share my experience with coming into the Philippines, how I went and approached getting these requirements and mandated things accomplished, and hopefully helping you guys avoid some of the fumbling and the stumbling that I did along the way. I would do it again. Even if it meant that I had to fumble and take another 5 COVID tests and all these things, I would do it again, because that 15 minutes from when I left that plane, my anxiety level just went up. I started sweating. I was like, oh my God, here we go. There's going to find some reason for me not to enter the Philippines. Lo and behold, it was the easiest thing. I was like, wow, that was much ado about nothing. Wow, I really panicked for no reason. Once you fulfill these requirements, they're there. They're waiting for you. They know if you're going to be entering the country or not. That's it. Just go through the motions and enjoy the Philippines. One of the best places on earth to visit pre-pandemic, and now during the pandemic it certainly is, because they've made it, within certain requirements, easy for you to enter the country. And trust me, 15 minutes from plane to taxi, you can't beat that. It didn't even happen to me before the pandemic. All right, folks, I don't want to keep mumbling about this anymore. You guys can kind of figure out what it's going to take if you are really truly serious in entering this country. It's here for you. The people need your tourist dollars. They need your investment money. So whatever it takes for you to come to this country, just get it done. Let's save the Philippines as well. All right, guys, thanks for joining me on today's stream, and I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys on the next vlog.